So, it's been about a week now since this news came out, and since it's actually been confirmed and we have a little more information on it, I've decided to go ahead and make this video now to discuss, is Pokémon Z confirmed? Let me start off by showing you these pictures. This shows off the new Zygarde forms. Now, we know that these are 100% confirmed, and these are what they are going to look like. Turns out Zygarde actually has a total of 5 different forms. Zygarde Core, Zygarde Cell, Zygarde 10%, Zygarde 50%, which is the one that we all know and love, or know, and then Zygarde Perfect. Now, the way these forms work are Zygarde Cell is a very, very small Pokemon that, well, it's a cell. Zygarde Core makes up a part of Zygarde Perfect's brain and is able to communicate with all the other cells and other cores. Zygarde 10% is what happens when you have 10% of all of Zygarde's cores and cells put together. Zygarde 50% is obviously 50%, and Zygarde Perfect is when every single Zygarde cell and core in the world comes together and creates Zygarde Perfect. So since we have all of this news on Zygarde, does this mean that we are getting Pokémon Z? Well, no. We cannot confirm at this point that Pokémon Z is going to be released. We just can't. Pokémon Z, as far as Nintendo is concerned, doesn't exist. As far as they've told us, as far as we can confirm at this point. What is today? September 17? Yeah, Force Awakens comes out in 3 months. We cannot confirm that Pokemon Z is coming out. That's not to say that it's definitely not coming out. Okay? I'm not saying that they're not making a Pokemon Z. I'm just saying, as of right now, Pokemon Z has not been confirmed. There's a big difference. We have all of these new Zygarde forms, so what does it mean? Well, these forms are being advertised to us to tie into a new Pokemon anime called Pokemon X, Y, and Z. We have the poster for it right here. Now, this isn't a new anime. So I guess I should take that back. It's not a new anime series. It's Pokemon XY with the little Z attached. And you're like, but Skull, you just said Pokemon Z isn't confirmed. Yes, I did. But it's right there in the title. Yes, it is. That doesn't mean squat. And I'll tell you why. We had, in the past, we had Pokemon Best Wishes Season 2 in Japan. We had Pokemon Best Wishes, not the Orange Archipelago, it was the, something Islands. Anyway, the last series of Pokemon Best Wishes in Japan, which is the equivalent of Black and White here, focused on a series of islands that have never appeared in the games. I'm really embarrassed that I don't remember what they are, but in my defense, the last end of Best Wishes was very forgettable. So, we have an anime-exclusive island. Oh, here's a good one. Season 2 of the anime, between the original season and the Johto season, there was an entire season focused on the Orange Islands. That's why there was orange stuck in my head. We had Orange Islands out the wazoo with things like island-specific colorations for Pokemon that were all pink instead of the normal color. We had all sorts of different islands that focused on Pokemon from Generation 2 that weren't seen in-game for another year or so after those episodes came out. Heck, Pokemon 2000 came out, well, in 2000, and it focused on Lugia, which didn't get its own game until almost a year later. So, here's the thing. Just because there was a Pokemon Orange Archipelago doesn't mean that there came to be a Pokemon The Orange Islands video game. Although there are a ton of great Pokemon ROM hacks and stuff that focus on the Orange Islands, there was never an official Orange Islands video game. So just because we have this upcoming series called Pokemon X, Y, and Z doesn't mean that we're getting Z automatically because of that. It would in my mind, just be a little interesting. I'll get back into that in a second, but first of all, let's look at this. Okay, we have this poster of the Mega Evolution Special 4, in which Alana and Ash finally meet. If you guys watch the Mega Evolution Specials, then you know that this is a really big deal. You know that this is exciting. It's amazing. I can't wait to see how this all works out. But it ties into the X, Y, and Z anime arc, which the first episode, it was just revealed this morning, will focus on Zygarde. It is literally called Z Awakens. It's pretty amazing to think about that all of this is going to be coming up very soon. In Japan, all this happens next month, over October and November. And, well, you'd think if they were going to tie in with the video games that they would pretty much, you know, have the video games come out next month or the month after. We haven't heard squat about a main series Pokemon game coming out this year. It's September. If they were going to release one by the end of this year, they really should have announced it by now, because if they were to announce it today, then they have less than 4 months, really only 3.5 months, to market it and make it and distribute it and all that stuff. So, I think it's a pretty safe assumption that we're not getting, if Pokemon Z exists, we're not getting it this year. And at the very least, we're not getting any main series Pokemon game this year. First time in like 7-8 years. So that's pretty fun to think about, that 2015, there's nothing for Pokemon. We are getting tons of side things. You know, we are getting Pokemon Shuffle, we are getting Pokemon Super Mystery Dungeon in November. We're getting tons of other Pokemon things, just not a main series game. Excuse me, I woke up, so I haven't taken my allergy medicine and I'm allergic to my cat. Anyway, so we have this poster, and then we also have this, which features a new form of Greninja called Ash-Greninja. Now, people saw this and they immediately thought, oh, it should be a Mega Evolution. No, it's not a Mega Evolution. It's being marketed specifically as, quote, Ash-Greninja. In Japan, it's Satoshi-Greninja. That's Ash's Japanese name. So, we have this. Does this indicate that there's going to be Pokemon Z and that we're going to get new features? No. Nowhere in the press release does it say anything about a video game. All we're seeing for Ash-Greninja is that it's going to happen in the anime, and that something similar happened in Kalos hundreds of years ago, but only once. Take that as you will. I'm sure we'll get more explanation in the anime at some point. For now, all we have as far as new content goes is the 5 forms of Zygarde, 4 of which are new, and Ash-Greninja, which is little more than Greninja with some things around its face to make it look a little more like Ash. It happens when a trainer and their Pokemon have their friendship completely maxed out. I'll say this, if this is a feature in Pokemon Z, I would love it if you could customize your Pokemon even when they're sent into battle. That would be really awesome to me. But I will reiterate, no, this does not mean Pokemon Z is confirmed. Even with all of this information, you're sitting there thinking, but it's blatantly obvious that Pokemon Z is coming out. Is Pokemon Z the next game? My answer is, I don't know. All signs do point to it, yes. But does that mean that it'll happen? No, it doesn't 100% mean it'll happen. Is it likely? Yeah, absolutely likely. But will it happen? I really couldn't tell you. If I were to give a guess, an educated guess, it would be no. No, we wouldn't get a Pokemon Z. I do have a few reasons for that. The first one that very few people have touched on in other videos that I've seen talking about this news is that at the end of the Hoopa movie, we saw a preview for next year's movie, and this is where people saw the new Pokemon. People couldn't decide if it was Generation 7 or a new form of something from Gen 6 or something like that. We now know it's a Zygarde core. So we saw that in the preview for next year's movie, and we saw a Shadow of Zygarde Perfect. So wouldn't that mean that next year's movie would be Pokemon Z? And it would make sense to make Pokemon Z to release around the same time. In Japan, these movies always release in July. It's literally been that way every year since 1998. So it would make sense to release the next film in July and Pokemon Z to tie in with that. After all, the trailer showed off 2 forms of Zygarde, right? Well, honestly, I don't think the next movie will feature Zygarde at all. That doesn't sound very logical. I mean, the trailer clearly shows 2 completely new forms of Zygarde, and Zygarde, heck, it doesn't even have its own trading card yet, so isn't next year's movie going to be about Zygarde, and isn't there going to be a Pokemon Z tie-in with it? No. All indications say absolutely not. And I'll tell you why. At the end of the Arceus movie, there was a trailer infamously featuring Lugia versus Ho-Oh. That never happened in the next movie. The next movie featured Zoroark and Zorua, not Lugia, and Ho-Oh has yet to appear in the flesh in a Pokemon movie as a starring role. So, but that was the trailer. Everyone was so excited, and then we get the crappy Zoroark Master of Illusions. And by crappy, I mean it's not what people expected. Here, people are expecting the next film feature Zygarde. I don't think it's going to. Simply because they're already featuring Zygarde incredibly heavily in the anime right now. 8 months before the next film comes out. 9 months even. Almost a full year, and they're featuring Zygarde so heavily right now, I don't think that next year's film will feature Zygarde at all. I don't think that it'll feature any of the Generation 6 Pokemon. I wouldn't be surprised if it does, in fact, feature Generation 7. So, yeah, just because there's a trailer for Pokemon movie next year featuring Zygarde doesn't mean we're going to get Pokemon movie next year featuring Zygarde. We have learned this the hard way in the past. I honestly think it's a red herring. Does this mean that it won't feature Zygarde? Absolutely not. I will be happy to be wrong about this. If next year's movie does feature Zygarde and in all of his glory and stuff, fine. I'll be the first to say I was wrong. That's another thing. Don't take anything of what I say here as anything being said by Nintendo or Pokemon or whatever. This is just my analysis of the situation. I don't believe that the next year will feature Zygarde just because it's being featured so heavily now in seemingly all of its forms. I think that next year's movie is going to feature Gen 7, and we're going to see the first Gen 7 games come out shortly after that. So, and that leads up to my next point, is everyone's like, but why feature all of these new Zygarde forms and Ash-Greninja if they're not going to be in their own games? Well, that is something else to think about, isn't it? But I will point out that we saw Ho-Oh in the first episode of Pokemon the anime, and we saw Togepi in episode 50 or so. Neither of them appeared in a video game for oh so long afterwards. I mean, heck, when those were revealed, Pokemon Yellow hadn't even come out, and when Pokemon Yellow was coming out, everyone thought, oh, this means you should be able to get that legendary Pokemon Ash saw, or you should be able to get Togepi. Then Yellow comes out as little more than a Red and Blue remake with extra Team Rocket and Pikachu walking behind you. You didn't get Ho-Oh, you didn't get Togepi, you didn't get any of these new Pokemon until the games even after that. Just because something is featured so heavily in the anime doesn't mean that means that they're going to be in the next games, or that the next games will feature them specifically. I mean, heck, Zorua and Zoroark were featured the heck out of movie 13, and yet you can only get them in the original Black and White games by transferring event Pokemon from Gen 4. Some people were unable to do that. You were literally unable to get Zorua and Zoroark because you missed out on the event or something. So, just because we're seeing Zygarde so heavily promoted doesn't mean that we're getting games based off of Zygarde. We have precedent to say that's not necessarily the case. Again, if I'm wrong, great. I'll be happy to be wrong. So, long story short, I guess what I'm trying to say is don't look too heavily into this. Yes, we have 4 new Zygarde forms, so Zygarde has 5 forms. That's amazing. We have this new form of Greninja called Ash-Greninja. We have all of this being advertised out the wazoo as happening by the end of this year. Great! But does this mean that we're getting Pokemon Z? I'll leave you with this. I forgot who it was that said it, but when I think it was the director of marketing for Pokemon, they were asked if they could give a cryptic word that we don't understand now, but we might within, say, 8 months' time. And their word that they chose was flowers. A lot of people have interpreted this as saying we're getting Pokemon Z, and it's going to feature AZ and his Floette from Pokemon X and Y. And I'll be honest, if Pokemon Z expanded on that, I'd be happy, because that's my favorite side story of any Pokemon game. It was just barely touched on, but it was such a tearjerker, I loved it. So if they were to make Pokemon Z and expand on that, then great. At the very least, that's the only thing that we have to go on. Just one word, flowers, for the next Pokemon games. It may feature Pokemon Z or XYZ, or XZYZ, or X2Y2, or XYZ, whatever they're going to call it. It could feature any of that. Or it could be Generation 7. Or it could be Generation 6.5, where they add so many more Pokemon it could be considered a whole new generation, except it's a remake. I don't know. Like I said, I'm the last person to know any of this stuff. I'm just analyzing it and doing my best guesswork. But the point of this video is to address the question, is Pokemon Z confirmed? No? It's not. Do all indications say that it'll happen? Absolutely. Doesn't mean it will. At this point, we can't say for sure. So I'm going to leave this video here, and I'm just going to ask for you guys to leave your thoughts in the comments below. Is there anything that I might have missed in my analysis that you think is worth mentioning? Please go ahead and comment. I welcome an open discussion on this. And again, if I'm wrong, then awesome. Then that means we're getting Pokemon Z. Maybe even by next summer. Who knows? Anyway, that pretty much does it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Thanks everyone for watching, and stay tuned for more.